Well, as soon as we get done with one, another one has been found. Well, what do we have here this time? A very scratched up top of a machine, but picked this up at the thrift store for $14. And the only thing it's missing, as far as I can tell, is the cover here for the ports on the front. But you really can't tell that it had one, other than there's little hinges down here. And it still has the plastic on it. And there's still plastic on the button. The only thing is there's these scratches on the top. But other than that, it's not in that bad a shape. It's an Aspire AX3950, Windows 7 Home Premium, an i3 54 with a 500, oh my gosh, 540, 4 gigs of RAM, a 500 gig hard drive, Intel graphics. So a very first gen i3 processor, so probably about 2010 is my guess. You can see the cooler inside. I'm surprised it's a Cooler Master. It is quite dirty. And on the back here, we can see they have some expansion type ports. We got an Ethernet cable, a VGA cable, and a power cable. They were all bundled on here like this when they set it down. So might as well just get it all. It's missing a little thumb screw. That's no big deal. I have some of those. But that's everything here. It doesn't have USB 3.0. It's all 2.0. We do have HDMI though, and some legacy PS2 keyboard mouse ports there as well. No built-in Wi-Fi, so you'd have to add that. But let's go ahead and open it up. Definitely got a dirty machine here, and a loose stick of RAM. But it looks like it has two different kinds. There's some blue and some green, so I wonder if someone upgraded it at some point. And it is a, yeah, there's the Cooler Master. Dirty as can be. And underneath there you can see the hard drive. And we have the DVD CD-ROM drive, I'm sure. So, of course, I'm going to go ahead and clean it up a little bit here, see how to take this apart. And we'll see what is on it. Just moving up these clips here, that's all we had to do, and the front comes right off. Of course, our drive and all of our different ports here on the front. Well, they got all kinds of different cards and whatnot going on here. I'm sure if we take out these two screws, we should be able to pull this caddy out. Slides right on up and out. We got our hard drive and everything right here, so I'm going to unplug our wires. And hopefully that'll be the only things holding this in here. There we go, more access inside. Definitely a dust bunny. But it looks like we have the shorter cable here for the CD drive. And then the hard drive. There we go. And of course, power here from our super cheap light-on power supply. What does it say for wattage on that? I'm sure somebody has already seen it. And I just cannot. Anyway. Okay, so let's just we'll get these cables out of here. I just want to get it cleaned up, so I'm just going to do that. So here's the RAM that was in there. Looks like somebody tried to put some DDR2 inside of a DDR3 slot. That's kind of funny. I'm not sure. I mean, these weren't seated in all the way, but they were in there. Somebody tried to upgrade it with the wrong stuff. But here's the inside with all of our little components out. Very dusty again. Doesn't appear to be as bad as that Dell with the people that were smoking. This should clean up decently okay. So I'm going to take out the motherboard now, and then we'll get to cleaning it up. It appears to take the whole motherboard out, you have to take off the heatsink, and I don't really feel like doing that right now, especially not knowing if the thing even works. So we'll just clean it up the way it is now. At least the fan can come off without taking the whole heatsink off. And we are now ready to reassemble. Everything's all nice and clean now. Now I just need to remember how it all fit in here. Had to check which one of these wires goes where. I'm sure it doesn't really matter because they're all USB, but we'll put them back where they had them at the factory just to be extra safe about it. Now we got the SATA cables back where they belong. Here's our little caddy that does the hard drive and whatnot. We have a Seagate 500 gig April of 2012, and that's the same for the disk drive here. It's 2012. This one's January though, so obviously the machine must have been made around that time period. You know, the same date here, April 13th of 2012 on the power supply. So 2012, but definitely a processor that was a little older, at least I assume, being a 3-digit number for the i3, that it must be a first generation of it. So we'll get this put back in here. Okay, and the outside still needs cleaning, but we'll get to that when we make sure that the thing works. Now you think I would have done that first, and you also think I would have put this in before I closed it up. We'll leave the cover off right now, why not? So I'm going to turn on the power strip here. And it's doing something. We got a beep. Let's delete to do setup. Oh, nope, it's already booting. Well, somebody put Windows 10 on it. Wasn't expecting that. Well, we had a little bit of sound there, and it looks like it was doing a Windows update the last time someone turned it off. Oh, Windows updates take forever when you're on a hard drive. Maybe that's why they got rid of it. Other than the hard drive noise, it is quite quiet. After multiple restarts and updates or whatever it was doing, I was able to get into one of the accounts here, and it looks like the computer came from the garment district in New York. So it has a lot of different garment related things on there, you know, clothing, perfume, whatever. Obviously I'm not going to show any of that, but that's a little history of it. It came from the garment district, and that's what it was used for. It looks like the last time it was used was about 2017. And I mean, the background here kind of says that too. 2015 is when Windows 10 came out, so I'm sure they upgraded at that time, and this is the older background for it. But I'm going to see if it's activated and stuff. We haven't necessarily done that. So here's the specs of the computer. It's the Acer at 3.07 gigahertz, 4 gigs of RAM, 64-bit. And it looks like Windows 10 is activated, Windows 10 Home. Interesting. Well, from here, I'm not sure if I'm going to freshly install Windows or move stuff over or what exactly I'm going to do. But when we do get to that point, I'll definitely share it with all of you. Just by guessing, I was able to get into the main account here, which takes up about 200 gigs on the hard drive. And it's just more garment and perfume and that kind of stuff, exports and imports and little store, it looks like, whatever. I'm not sure. All I know is that that's what's on here. And just, you know, it's always interesting looking at a bit of the history of where a machine comes from. You know, it's all part of its story. So that's really neat. But again, we'll just get it all off of here and start clean. I originally tried to just take the drive out and clone it since it had Windows 10 and it was activated. Cleaned everything off of it, just reinstalled it with the Windows 10 thing. But that didn't work. There's something wrong with the drive and its sectors. But the section that did work on the drive was the Windows 7 original OEM install. And here it is. It just needs some whatever in the world I want here. Just skip that. McAfee, nobody wants that. And there's our desktop. Windows 7, Home Premium, I believe 64-bit. Reinstalled from the factory partition on the hard drive. Now, let's see if we can get it moved over to an SSD. Additionally, while putting away the other RAM that was in here that was wrong, I came across these 1 GB DDR3 memory modules, and I'll go ahead and put them in here. Well, that'll give it at least a total of 6 gigs. For whatever reason, I cannot get all 3 partitions on this drive to move over. I can't even get the system reserved or the main Windows installation to move. But, of all things, I'm able to get the recovery partition to move over here. So that's what we're doing. Just moving over the recovery partition seems to at least allow it to boot into the recovery here. We'll see if it allows us to install anything. I mean, there's no other partitions, so hopefully it can see more than, you know, it knows that there's a bigger drive here than what is, you know, not there. Well, anyway, you know, we moved over like a 20 gig partition. There's still a lot of space on the drive. Hopefully it can see that. Okay, it looks like it does. It does see it. It sees the drive and everything. So we'll hit OK. And hopefully it says, please wait a moment. I'm sure it's going to be many moments because, yep, there it goes. Okay. Hopefully this reinstalls without issues. That would be kind of fun. And here we are. Windows 7 is installed from the SSD partition there. And while I don't see it here, we can see 218 gigs is a 256. So the factory partition must still be there. But that's awesome. We got it working. And using that partition, we're able to make sure it's activated. And it looks like the 6 gigs of RAM is also showing up as it should. I wonder, is this Service Pack 1 or 2? Doesn't necessarily say. But we're going to try to upgrade it to Windows 10 and see how well that goes. So off to the internet we go. Well, it's been a while. Well, it's the same day, but it's been a couple hours. And we finally have Windows 10 installed. Boy, this was a struggle to get this far. So I originally tried downloading the updater from online because I thought you could still do that and have it activate because apparently they forgot to turn that service off from 2016 or whatever. Anyway, I couldn't get it to run. It didn't have the right security set or something on Windows 7 to be able to work correctly. So I said, forget that. That's a bummer. And we'll try a good old Windows 10 DVD. And sure enough, I put it in there. And of course, that spins up just fine. It's the older version of Windows 10, the first version when it came out. And that's what we have on here. It's not the newest version. And so I put this in, originally the home disk, and it wanted a product key. But then I put in this other disk I have that's just Windows 10 64-bit. And it found everything and said that I could upgrade. So I'm like, sure, why not? I set the date back to 2016, and off we went. So I let it update, and I plugged it into the internet because I couldn't be sure at the time if it really was going to activate for us. And we get Windows is activated. Wow. Now, mind you, we're still in the old version. Maybe once we upgrade or something, it won't say that anymore. But I got my fingers crossed because we did carry over a legit license from Windows 7. And we still have the Acer here from Windows 7. Still home, matches the Windows 7 version. And it does say Windows is activated. So now, let's upgrade to the newest version of Windows 10. Okay, let's see what happens. The computer upgraded successfully last night and now has the newest version of Windows 10 Home on it, and it's still activated. But today something showed up in the mail. Something I've always wanted, but always forget about. But whenever I think of it, I'm like, that's pretty cool. I definitely want one of those. And, well, here it is. It's a Variac. And it's an old one, all right. I believe this particular one is from 1949 or 1950, something like that. It definitely has cloth wiring inside of it, and unfortunately, the switch is absolutely disintegrated. When I first got it out of the package, it was in fine shape. One of the screws here that somebody put in to hold the band around the bottom came off, and so it was a little apart, but not too bad. And plugged it in, turned it on, no hum, nothing, no action at all. I did notice that the switch was making a weird clicking noise when trying to use it. It had a weird double click going on. And the switch is unique. It turns on and off both the neutral and positive sides. It does both, not just one, both. Pretty interesting. The switch used to be down here at the bottom, but since it disintegrated, well, here it sits now. The wires inside, I took plenty of pictures so I could be sure to know where exactly they are supposed to go. And I wired it up to this old cord that is for a, well, it says heater on it. This came from a toaster oven. So plenty of amps for this particular one, which is 10 amps. Yes, this is a Variac V10. There's also a 5 amp version, and I'm not sure if there was a higher amp version. This particular one, as you can see, has definitely had years of use in its life. And the reason I picked it up is it was a pretty decent price. I got this for $50 and about $18 shipping. I thought that was a pretty good deal for one of these older ones, and I definitely wanted an older one versus a newer one. I just felt like the older ones, like the quality is just a lot higher than the newer ones of today. But of course, there's not the safety features of the ones we have today. I've never used a modern one. They're all red and they look like they come from China. But this particular one is not red and definitely did not come from China. It's from the General Radio Company, Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA. And after taking out the switch and literally just wiring a cord into the appropriate lines inside, we're good to go. One interesting thing to note is that this is the cord that was on it. This is the wires that were going into it. It's literally like for two-phase or something, like you have your ground and your two positives and your neutral, like on a dryer or oven or something. But these two were together, and these two were together, and on the other end, this is what you get. It's like they cut off the others. I'm not sure. It has to be a replacement wire, unless they used a double wire like this to carry more amperage for the circuit of this particular device. Not entirely sure. Definitely a older cord though. I decided to just not use it for the moment because I had this heater cord here, and you know what, that's just easier to use right at this moment. The original cord isn't grounded. This isn't grounded either, but it is polarized. And I did hook up the plug on here, which, believe it or not, is also polarized the same way. So it's hooked up just like the plug here is. So yes, it's a true Variac. Very cool. Very happy to have it in the collection and to share with all of you. I'm sure it'll be definitely used in many videos to come, because this is a very cool addition. Also the fact that it goes above 120 to 130 and even 140, so we can even do some voltages a little higher for the 130 volt bulbs and stuff like that. Very cool. No cracks in this little Bakelite plastic cover here. Here's one of the original screws. This one on the other side was missing, but believe it or not, this ground screw was the same thread and everything, so there it is. This is the screw that was in there. It's too small, but definitely did the job back in the day, I guess. You see the outside is in pretty rough shape. Again, it definitely had use in its life. And we have a bulb plugged in here. I originally had a bulb plugged into this thing, but this wouldn't work. Like, it works, you plug it into the outlet, it works, but the prongs are just too far apart. So what you have to do for this old plug is pinch them together a little bit, and then it works just fine. because I was real heartbroken when I first plugged it in. It didn't do anything at all. To be real honest, I was tinkering with it out here with my friend, and we just took it apart, and yeah, this is the remnants of that switch. On the front of it here, we can get a little bit of information. 10 amp, 250 volt, 15 amp, 120 volt, 1 horsepower, was that 250 volt AC, 1.5 horsepower rather, 250 volt DC. And it's kind of Underwriters Laboratory inspected, H&H, and that's on in USA. That's really about it for that switch. I'll put a different one on here for sure. Just don't have one at this very second. Here at the top, it says type V10, and then there's an M and a T. Interesting. The listing for this particular one on eBay was for a 5 amp one, but the pictures clearly showed that it was 10. And just looking at what some of these go for, nobody was really buying them, but I saw listings for these upwards of $300 for this thing. Like, that's cool and all, but why? So when I saw this particular one for 50 bucks, I jumped on it. Okay, enough talking about this really cool thing. Let's go ahead and show you it working. So let me turn on the circuit here. You can hear it humming. So we're at 0 volts at the moment. 10, 20, and this is a 100 watt GE incandescent bulb. 30, 40, 50, 60, definitely needs its contacts cleaned. 70, 80, 90, 100 volts, 110, and 120. I'm not going to go any higher than that. The bulb isn't rated for anything higher than that. But how cool is that? That is awesome. So essentially what's happening in here is you have a coil, and if you can see, there's that little head in there moving around. You see right there? I can take this off in a different video and get you a better look. But as you can see, this coil wound in there. It's obviously dipped in something, you know, so that's just how ballasts are and whatnot, transformers. But on the top, that coating is missing. So that little head, kind of like it's kind of like a record needle. It's touching down, and it's picking up the voltage at different points in the coil. It's very simple. Much simpler than I thought it would be, actually. It's quite dirty inside, but it definitely can be cleaned up and still used without a problem, for sure. I might add a fuse or something in line here just for safety. But other than that, this is an awesome find. Now, one thing I was doing when I wasn't able to get anything to light is using this multimeter here, and I just put the prongs right in here. They fit a little bit. Okay. And let's turn on our meter to voltage here. Of course, the lights are gonna, there we go. Let's turn it on. Yeah, volts. Okay, let's see here. Somewhere where there's not too much glare. It's about 12 at the 10. 22. 32. So that's about 2 off at each one. 43. So it's a little truer if you do 1 dot below the actual number. So if we go about there, probably get 50, yep. 60. 70. It's 80. 80 is about there. So if we do 80, we're getting about 85. 90 is 95. 100 is 106. See, where do we get just 100? Right here. 100. 120 is at 110. No wonder that bulb is so bright when we get to 120. Because we go to 120, and we're running 127.8 volts through that thing. 130 is 137. At the very top end, we get 140, which I believe is the spec. It's supposed to go up to 140, so they're not wrong. Just the label on here isn't necessarily right. So yeah, if you go to 70, you're getting about 74. But a very cool device, and I'm so happy to have it in the collection. Definitely be using this in upcoming videos. Back to the computer here. I mean, the top is scraped beyond belief, but you take the little plastic cover off the power button and that's brand new. Turned out pretty good. Again, take the little plastic off the front here. That looks real nice. Not bad at all. Let's watch it turn on. That CD drive makes some sad noises. But it did work to install Windows. And there we are. That was pretty quick. Next steps really are probably just installing some generic programs on it, and that'll be about it. I like to do something to clean up these scratches a little bit, but we'll see. Overall, very pleased with this find, and the fact that we could keep the Windows versions all the way from the factory. Installed software with the background and everything, kept that, and the Windows license all the way from the original install to now. That's pretty good.